Her birthday had passed 2 weeks ago, but the phone never rang. Not one message from her children, not even a thinking of you text. The silence in her small apartment was louder than ever. That was the story of Ms. Ruth, a woman I once met in a senior wellness clinic. She had raised 3 children by herself after a divorce, sacrificed her dreams, and never once asked for anything in return. Her fridge was still covered in pictures of smiling grandchildren. But in the quiet hours of her life, it wasn't her family she leaned on, it was herself. And that truth, as heartbreaking as it sounds, is something I've witnessed again and again in over a decade of working with older adults. As we age, the 3 things we can truly count on are not our children, not our spouses, and certainly not our money. I know that may be hard to hear, but stay with me, because what you're about to discover could shift the way you see aging, happiness, and yourself. See, most of us grow up believing that family will always be our safety net. We imagine our kids visiting us regularly, our partners growing old beside us, and our bank accounts keeping us comfortable. But the reality? Children grow up. They move away. They get busy with their own lives, and sometimes, even when they mean well, they forget. Spouses pass away or drift apart. Money? It can't hold your hand when you're sick, or listen when you need to talk. Over the past 10 years, I've sat with hundreds of seniors, some living with children, some completely alone, and I can tell you this. The happiest ones weren't those with the biggest families or the fullest bank accounts. They were the ones who rediscovered themselves. They were the ones who, like a woman I'll introduce you to in this video, stopped waiting to be cared for and started building a life that could wake up excited to live. Her name is Imo. She was a widow, a mother, a caregiver, and for most of her life, she lived for everyone but herself. She ran a small restaurant in Tokyo for 34 years, working from early morning until night, pouring every bit of her strength into raising her 2 daughters. When she finally closed her restaurant at age 68, her daughters lovingly said, "Mom, it's time. Come live with us. Let us take care of you now." But Imo surprised them. She smiled softly, with that calm, graceful wisdom only life can teach, and said, "I love you both. And because I love you, I choose to live alone." They were stunned. Wasn't this the moment every parent waited for, when the roles reversed and the children became the caretakers? But what Imo had come to realize is that peace in old age doesn't come from being taken care of. It comes from reclaiming your independence. It comes from not being a burden. It comes from finding joy, even if you have to walk that path alone. And she did walk it, literally. With chronic back pain from decades of standing in the kitchen, Imo started taking daily walks in her neighborhood park. Just 10 minutes a day at first, then 20, then 45. One afternoon, she sat down on a bench to rest and was approached by a woman who smiled and asked, "Would you like to join our yoga club? It's gentle, anyone can do it." That moment changed everything. Imo said yes. And through stretching and movement, she began to feel her body again, not just the pain, but the possibility. She told me once, "I used to think my daughters would look after my health. Now I know my health is my gift to them, not my burden." That mindset shift? That is the first of the 3 treasures Imo discovered in old age. And I've seen it transform lives. Health isn't just about medication or checkups, it's about the choice to move, to breathe, to care for this body that carries us. But Imo didn't stop there. She also joined a local volunteer gardening group, something she had never done before. There, she met an 8-year-old boy who asked, "Grandma, am I doing this right?" And just like that, a bond was formed. A new relationship, one not built on blood, but on kindness and shared purpose. Over the weeks, she became an important part of that group. They laughed, they worked together, and in their small acts of service, they became each other's support system. That's the second treasure, meaningful connection. Not just family, but friendships, community, shared humanity. Imo once said, "The biggest fear in old age isn't being alone. It's feeling useless. But when you open your heart, you find people who help you feel alive again." And finally, there was the piano. At 68, Imo decided to take lessons. A lifelong dream she had buried under decades of duty. Her fingers were stiff, the keys unfamiliar. But she practiced daily, slowly, purposefully, until one day, she wasn't just playing, she was expressing. She wasn't just reading notes, she was telling her story through music. And when she performed for a group of fellow seniors, some of whom had lost their spark, something magical happened. They smiled. They cried. They remembered. And Imo knew. This was more than a hobby. This was her 3rd treasure, passion. A reason to wake up. A rhythm to her days. Something that belonged only to her. So if you're still with me, ask yourself this. Have you spent your life giving everything to others and forgotten what lights you up inside? Do you know what your version of piano might be? If so, I'd love for you to share it. Comment below and let me know, what is one dream you've set aside that you want to reclaim? If this video speaks to you, please take a second to like it, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell. Your support helps me continue bringing you stories that matter and reach others who need to hear them too. In the rest of this video, we'll dive deeper into each of these three treasures: health, relationships, and passion. You'll hear more of Emo's journey, and I'll also share expert insight from my years working with older adults, how to improve balance and mobility in your 60s and 70s, how to build real friendships even when you feel invisible, and how to find purpose again, one small act at a time. This isn't just Emo's story. It could be yours. And what you discover here may just become your roadmap to a happier, more peaceful chapter of life. Let's begin. Part 1. Health. Your health is not a burden, it's your power. 10 seconds. That's how long it took for her to collapse in the kitchen. No warning. No time to call for help. Just a sharp pain in her back, and then the floor. That moment became the turning point in Emo's life. For years, she had carried the weight of her world, 2 daughters, a small restaurant, and the responsibilities that came with being both a mother and a provider. She worked tirelessly for 34 years, standing for hours each day, lifting heavy pots, scrubbing floors, rarely resting, never complaining. Like many women of her generation, she believed strength meant silence, and self-worth came from sacrifice. But what she didn't realize was that while she was busy taking care of everyone else, her body had begun sending quiet warnings. The stiffness in her shoulders, the aching in her back, these were whispers of a body asking for care. And she, like so many others I've worked with over the years, didn't listen until those whispers turned into a scream. When she finally saw the doctor, the diagnosis came: a herniated disc caused by years of strain and neglect. It wasn't a surprise, it was a consequence. But even then, Emo didn't slow down. She told herself she was too busy, too needed. Resting felt like weakness. Until that one morning, when her body made the choice for her. She fell. Alone. Her daughters were unaware. Her pride had kept her from telling them how much pain she was in. Lying on the floor, staring up at the ceiling, Emo realized something that changed her life. If I don't take care of this body, no one else can do it for me. That realization became her new truth. After she closed her restaurant, she decided to start small. Every morning, she whispered to herself, "Today, I'll walk." At first, it was just 10 minutes around the local park. Her back protested. Her legs felt shaky. She stopped often, but she didn't stop showing up. There's a term we use in geriatric psychology, reclaiming agency. It means taking your power back through consistent, intentional action. That morning walk, though simple, was Emo's way of reclaiming control over her life. 2 months later, she was walking 45 minutes a day. She breathed easier. She stood taller. She smiled more. And slowly, she began to feel like herself again, not the tired version she had carried for decades, but the younger spirit she thought she had lost. One day, as she sat on a bench beneath a maple tree, resting after her walk, a stranger approached. A woman in her 70s, holding a yoga mat and smiling kindly. "I see you walking here every day," she said. "Would you like to join our senior yoga group? It's gentle. Anyone can do it." Emo hesitated. Yoga seemed foreign, unnecessary, maybe even silly, but something inside her said yes. Curiosity whispered louder than fear. So she showed up. The first class was awkward. Her joints were stiff, her balance shaky. But the teacher was patient, and the other women in the class, some younger, some older, welcomed her warmly. No judgment, only encouragement. And in the gentle rhythm of stretching and breathing, Emo discovered something profound. My health is not something my children should manage. It's mine. It's my responsibility. And it's my freedom. From that moment on, everything changed. Her identity shifted. She was no longer just someone who endured pain for the sake of others. She became someone who chose wellness for herself. Someone who moved with intention. Someone who said, "I matter," without words. From a medical standpoint, what Emo was doing was not just inspiring, it was strategic. Research shows that low-impact movement like walking, yoga, or light strength training can significantly improve balance, coordination, muscle strength, and even brain function in older adults. It helps reduce the risk of falls, delays the onset of frailty, and enhances overall mood. In short, movement is medicine, but it's the kind that doesn't come in a bottle. It comes from commitment. From choosing to show up for yourself day after day, Imo didn't stop at walking or yoga. She began preparing simpler, healthier meals. She drank more water. She started sleeping better. And most importantly, she began speaking more openly with her daughters. One afternoon, her youngest, Yuki, said, "Mom, I'm so glad you're taking care of yourself. I just wish you had told us how much pain you were in before." Imo smiled gently and replied, "Taking care of myself is how I love you now. So you don't ever have to worry." That's a truth I wish more older adults understood. When you choose health, not perfection, not youth, but genuine care, you're not just doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the people who love you. You're giving them peace of mind. You're offering them the gift of knowing you're strong, steady, and not silently suffering. That's what Imo meant when she said her health was her first treasure. It wasn't about vanity or fear of aging. It was about reclaiming dignity, living with clarity, and showing her daughters that she was not just surviving, she was thriving. So let me ask you, right now, when was the last time you did something for your body, not because you were afraid of falling, or because your doctor told you to, but because you wanted to feel good again, to feel strong, balanced, energized? You don't need to run a marathon. Sometimes, reclaiming your health begins with drinking more water, getting an extra hour of sleep, or simply walking to the corner and back. What matters is that you begin. And if this part of the story resonates with you, let me know in the comments. What is one thing you will start doing for your health this week? I'd love to hear it. And if this message speaks to you, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell. Not just to support our work, but to make a small promise to yourself. I will take care of me. Because your health is not a burden. It is your power. It is the foundation for everything else that matters. And once Imo rebuilt that foundation, something inside her woke up. A desire to reconnect, to belong, to share. Her newfound strength made space in her life for something even more powerful than independence, something we'll explore in the next part of her story. Because once you learn to care for yourself, your heart often starts looking for connection, not just any connection, but one that fills the soul. So stay with me. In the next section, we'll explore the second treasure that Imo found in her later years, the power of meaningful relationships. Because while your health helps you stand strong, it's your relationships that help you feel seen, loved, and alive. Part 2. Relationships. The people who fill your soul, not just your schedule. She hadn't expected to feel anything when the little boy reached for her hand. He couldn't have been more than 8 years old, standing there in the garden with a shovel that was clearly too big for him, his tiny voice asking, "Grandma, am I doing this right?" It was such a simple moment, one Imo could have brushed aside. But instead, she knelt down, smiled, and showed him how to hold the shovel properly. That brief, quiet connection would turn out to be the beginning of something life-changing. Something no one had prepared her for in old age, the return of belonging. If the first treasure of aging well is health, then the second is this: relationships that nourish the soul. Not the ones formed by obligation, but the ones that arise from kindness, shared effort, and honest connection. In my years working with older adults, I've seen it again and again. People can have children, grandchildren, siblings, and still feel invisible, still feel forgotten, because being surrounded doesn't always mean being seen. For Imo, this truth became personal after she reclaimed her physical strength. Once her body felt more capable, she found herself wondering, what now? What fills the day after the walk is over? After the yoga class ends? That's when she noticed the flyer pinned to a community board. Volunteers needed. Neighborhood garden project. No experience required. Just show up. So she did. On the first day, she was given gloves, a trowel, and a spot near the edge of the garden to weed. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy. Her knees complained and her back whispered in protest. But she stayed. And that's when the boy came over, awkwardly holding his shovel, full of curiosity and trust. That tiny exchange sparked something in Imo. It had been years since someone had looked to her, not as a mother or a widow, but simply as a person with something to offer. And from that day forward, she came back every week. The garden wasn't just about flowers anymore. It became her meeting place, a space to talk, to laugh, to listen. She met a woman who'd lost her husband, a teenager who came every Saturday to earn volunteer credits for school, and an older gentleman who brought jokes and tea in a thermos. These weren't people she would have met in her previous life. They didn't share her blood. They weren't family, but they shared the present. And that made all the difference. We often assume that family is enough, that if you have children, you won't be lonely. But research paints a different picture. According to studies from the National Institute on Aging, loneliness in seniors is more strongly linked to lack of meaningful connection than lack of company. In other words, you can live in a full house and still feel empty inside. It's not the quantity of people around you that matters, it's the quality of presence. And that's exactly what Emma found in the garden. Over time, she became a mentor to that boy, a friend to the other volunteers, and part of a community that expected nothing from her but her presence. One morning, while watering the marigolds, a woman around her age walked over and asked, "Do you grow flowers at home too?" Emma smiled, paused for a moment, and said, "Actually, I've never grown anything before. But these flowers make me feel like I'm starting a new life." That sentence, spoken softly, summed up everything she had come to believe about relationships in old age. They weren't about continuing the past. They were about building something new. That's a powerful shift. So many seniors I've spoken with believe their relational world is behind them, that if they haven't built strong friendships by 60 or 70, it's too late. But Emma's story proves the opposite. It's never too late to create bonds that matter, especially when you let go of the idea that relationships must be lifelong to be valuable. Sometimes, a 10-minute conversation with a stranger at the park can lift you in ways a monthly call from your child cannot. Sometimes, a shared task, like planting a row of flowers, opens a deeper door than years of small talk ever could. And for Emma, it wasn't just about feeling useful again. It was about being part of something bigger than herself. That realization led her to start a small hiking group with some of the women she met through volunteering. They weren't climbing mountains, just walking trails, breathing fresh air, laughing about their stiff joints and aching feet. But those walks became sacred. They were spaces where joy returned, where the past didn't matter, only the now. And every now and then, her daughters would check in. "Mom, are you home this weekend? Can we come by?" To which she would respond, "Only if you don't mind joining me for a little hike." They would laugh. They were happy, because their mother was happy. That's the beautiful thing about healthy relationships, they multiply. When you are whole, you don't weigh others down. You lift them up. Emma had once feared being a burden, but now she had become a beacon. And yet, not all her lessons came through joy. One cold winter morning, she received news that pierced her like a knife. Her closest friend from her restaurant days, Aiko, had passed away alone. Aiko's children had long moved overseas. She lived in a high-rise apartment, surrounded by neighbors who barely knew her name. By the time anyone noticed she was gone, it had been nearly a week. Emma sat with that grief for days. She couldn't shake the thought, what if that had been me? But instead of letting fear consume her, she used it to deepen her purpose. She understood now that life doesn't promise companionship. It invites it. And we have to say yes. We have to show up. We have to be the ones who extend the hand, start the conversation, accept the invitation. Because loneliness isn't just being alone. It's believing no one would notice if you were. And the antidote to that is not waiting, it's reaching, volunteering, joining, creating, showing up for someone else, and in doing so, showing up for yourself. Emma later said something to her daughters that stayed with them. As we age, friendships become more precious than medicine. They heal in places no pill can reach. She wasn't speaking in metaphors. Connection lowers stress hormones, increases life expectancy, reduces cognitive decline. Real science backs what our hearts already know. We are wired to belong. So if you're still watching, I want to ask you something. When was the last time you made a new friend? When was the last time you shared a laugh with someone who didn't share your last name? If it's been too long, maybe it's time. Maybe this is your sign. And if this part of Emma's journey touched something inside you, leave a comment below. Tell us, what relationship in your life gives you meaning? Or what kind of connection are you craving right now? And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell. These small actions help us bring more stories like Emma's to people who need them. People like you and me, navigating the beautiful and sometimes lonely road of aging. As we close this part of the story, let's carry one last truth from Emma's journey. We are never too old to matter, never too old to belong, never too old to bloom again. But relationships are only one piece of the puzzle. There's one more treasure Emma uncovered, one that often hides quietly in the background, waiting for permission to rise, her passion. Her dream, that thing she set aside decades ago because life got in the way. In the next part of this video, we'll explore how Emma found her joy again at a piano bench, with fingers that hadn't played since childhood, and a heart that finally said, "It's my turn." Because while health gives us strength and relationships give us meaning, passion is what gives us fire. Let's keep going. Part 3, Passion. It's never too late to love what you love. The first time she sat at the piano, her fingers froze. Not from fear, but from unfamiliarity. The black and white keys stared back at her like an old friend she hadn't seen in decades, recognizable, but distant. She placed her hands on the keyboard slowly, unsure if they still remembered how to move, how to speak. The truth is, they didn't. Not yet. But Mo was ready to teach them again. If health gave her the strength to move, and connection gave her a reason to wake up each day, then this rediscovery of passion was what brought her life color, sound, and meaning. It was the third treasure of aging she never knew she needed, a personal joy that belonged only to her. In my work with older adults, I've often asked this question: what did you love before life got in the way? And I'm always amazed at how quickly their eyes light up. I used to paint. I always wanted to write poetry. I dreamed of dancing again. These aren't just hobbies. They are forgotten parts of the self. Things we set aside to build families, pay bills, take care of others. Things we promised ourselves we'd return to someday. For Mo, that someday came when she walked past a dusty upright piano in the corner of the community center. A young woman was playing a simple melody, gentle, repetitive, almost childlike. Mo stopped, mesmerized. She hadn't touched a piano since she was a little girl. Her parents couldn't afford lessons, and after marriage and motherhood took over, the dream disappeared. But standing there, she felt it stir again, the quiet longing. And this time, she didn't walk away. She asked the woman where she had learned to play. The answer surprised her. There's a beginner's class here. For seniors. Mo smiled, almost laughed. Wasn't she too old? Too stiff? But the truth whispered, no, you're right on time. She joined the class that same week. The first few sessions were frustrating. Her fingers felt slow, clumsy. Her mind struggled to remember what the heart already knew. But instead of quitting, she did what she had always done. She showed up, practiced every day, slowly, patiently, and something extraordinary began to happen. Music returned. Not flawless concertos or grand performances, but notes that expressed emotion. Simple songs that carried weight. Mo wasn't just playing music, she was reclaiming her voice. She often told me, I thought I had aged out of creativity. I thought passion was a young person's game. But the truth is, passion doesn't care how old you are. It only asks if you're ready to begin. That's the mistake many of us make as we age. We believe our best years are behind us. That trying something new is foolish. That dreams expire. But let me tell you, as someone who has coached dozens of seniors into their second lives, your brain, your heart, and your spirit are all capable of learning, of feeling deeply until the very end. In fact, engaging in hobbies that stimulate the mind, like music, language, or art, has been linked to reduced risk of dementia, improved emotional well-being, and even pain reduction. It's science confirming what Mo discovered at the piano. Joy is therapy. Over the months, she got better. She learned to play songs she had once hummed as a child. She began composing little melodies of her own. And then, one day, her teacher invited her to perform at a small event held at a nearby nursing home. Mo hesitated. I'm not a real musician, she said. I've only just started. But the teacher smiled and said, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to share your joy. So she played. Slowly, delicately. Each note carried not just sound, but story. The audience listened quietly, some closing their eyes, others smiling gently. And when she finished, there was a moment of silence, then soft applause. A woman in the front row had tears in her eyes. That song, she said, reminded me of my mother. Mo never forgot that moment. Because for the first time in years, she wasn't just giving love as a mother, she was giving beauty as herself. The performance turned into an invitation. Mo joined a small group of older amateur musicians. They began meeting once a week to practice, share songs, and eventually perform together at parks, hospitals, and community events. There were no auditions, no egos, just a shared love of music and the courage to show up. Through music, Mo found a new community. People who saw her not as someone's mother or someone's burden, but as someone creative, expressive, still evolving. Passion has that power. It reminds us that we are still becoming, that there are still firsts left in our lives. First performances, first paintings, first poems. And in a world that often tells older adults to sit down, be quiet, and disappear, passion is a quiet rebellion. It says, I'm still here. I still matter. Mo's daughters were stunned by the transformation. Mom, you've never seemed happier, Haruka said. And Yuki added, I don't remember the last time you smiled like this. To which Mo replied, That's because I stopped waiting for others to give me permission to be alive. If you're watching this right now, I want to ask you, what have you always wanted to try, but never gave yourself the chance to? Is it learning an instrument? Picking up a paintbrush? Writing your life story? It doesn't have to be grand. It just has to be yours. And if fear or doubt is holding you back, remember this. You don't have to be great to begin, but you do have to begin to feel great. Let this be your sign. Leave a comment below and tell us, what passion are you reclaiming? What small step will you take this week to bring joy back into your life? And if this part of Emo's journey inspired you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell. Because every share, every comment, helps another soul out there say, it's not too late for me either. Emo's story teaches us that the greatest masterpiece you create might come after retirement. That the most beautiful notes you play might echo in a quiet room, not a concert hall. That the dream you left behind at 20 can still find you at 70 if you're willing to open the door. But there's one final piece to this puzzle. One truth that Emo discovered not through piano keys or garden tools, but through deep reflection and a love so pure, it redefined what aging really means. Because while health gives us strength, and relationships give us meaning, and passion gives us light, there is something even more powerful than all three. In the final part of this video, we'll share Emo's ultimate legacy, not what she gave others, but what she finally gave herself. Stay with me, because what comes next may change the way you live every day from here on out. She sat alone in her living room, afternoon light casting a golden hue across the walls, and placed her fingers gently on the piano keys. It wasn't a performance, and there was no one watching. But as she began to play, each note that flowed from her fingertips told a story of rediscovery, quiet strength, and a happiness she never imagined she would find at this stage in life. The music wasn't perfect, but it was hers. And in that moment, Emo smiled, not for anyone else, but for herself. It had taken decades of living for others, of pouring herself into motherhood, duty, and survival, to finally realize that true happiness never came from outside validation. It wasn't found in applause, recognition, or even the affection of loved ones. It came from the simple, yet profound truth that she was enough, her joy, her voice, her peace, it all began within. For most of her life, Emo had believed, like many of us do, that the measure of a good life was how much you gave, how much you did for others. And she gave everything. Her time, her youth, her health, her dreams. She never complained. But with each year that passed, she slowly disappeared behind the roles she carried so faithfully. And when those roles began to fade, when her children grew up, when her body grew tired, she was left with silence and a question echoing in her heart. Who am I when no one needs me? That question is one I've heard countless times in my years working with older adults. It's one of the most honest, heartbreaking questions anyone can ask, because it reveals a lifetime of forgetting ourselves, of living as though our worth depended entirely on how useful we were to others. But Emo's story reminds us that we are more than what we give. We are also what we reclaim. Her journey back to herself didn't begin with a grand gesture. It began with a walk, a slow, deliberate walk that taught her to trust her legs again. Then yoga, which taught her to breathe again. Then community service, which taught her to belong again. And finally, the piano, which taught her to feel again. Piece by piece, she pieced herself together, not into who she had been before marriage or motherhood, but into someone wiser, deeper, more whole. And the beauty of it all? She did it not for anyone else, but because she finally believed she deserved to feel alive. This, I believe, is the real definition of happiness, not constant joy, not the absence of pain, but the quiet confidence that your life is your own. That even as time passes and the world changes, you are still here, still growing, still capable of joy, still worthy of love, especially from yourself. Emo's daughters once asked her, gently, "Mom, don't you get lonely living by yourself?" She smiled, placed her hands over theirs, and said, "I used to be lonely, even when I was surrounded by people. Now, I am peaceful, even when I'm alone." That answer stayed with them, because they realized what many of us only learn late in life. Being alone doesn't equal being lonely. And being surrounded doesn't guarantee connection. Real connection, especially the connection we have with ourselves, is what truly sustains us. I've seen people in crowded nursing homes feel forgotten. I've seen seniors with daily visitors still feel hollow. And I've seen people like Emo, who live simply, quietly, intentionally, radiate a light that fills every space they walk into. That light, I've come to believe, is the glow of someone who has made peace with themselves, who has stopped chasing approval, who who has stopped measuring worth by productivity, who has finally realized that they are allowed to matter, just as they are. And if you've been watching this video, if something in your heart is stirring, if there's a quiet voice inside you saying, "I've forgotten how to choose me," then I want you to know you're not alone. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to change everything at once. You just have to start. One moment, one choice, one breath at a time. Maybe today, that choice is to take a walk. Maybe tomorrow, it's to pick up a paintbrush or call someone you've missed. Or maybe it's simply sitting in silence and whispering to yourself, "I still matter." That's how it begins. Not with a bang, but with a return. A return to the truth that has always been yours. Happiness is not something someone else can give you. It's not something you wait for. It's something you create, moment by moment, from within. So I invite you now, if this story touched you, if it made you pause, reflect, or remember something you once loved, please take a moment to share it in the comments below. Let us know. What is one thing you want to do this week just for yourself? It could be big. It could be small. It just needs to be real. And if you found value in this message, please like this video, subscribe to this channel, and turn on the notification bell. Every single click helps us share stories like Immo's with more people who need to hear them. People who have forgotten how to hear their own hearts. People like you, like me, like all of us. Because at the end of the day, no matter your age, no matter your past, no matter your regrets, you are not too late. You are not too far gone. You are not finished. The most beautiful chapters of your life may still be unwritten, but only if you're willing to pick up the pen. Only if you're willing to listen to the voice inside that says, "I want to live, not just survive." That voice is your soul reminding you that joy, peace, and purpose still belong to you. So don't wait. Don't shrink. Don't disappear. Step forward into your life, into your music, into your joy. Because true happiness doesn't come from being perfect or needed or endlessly giving. It comes from being you, fully, freely, unapologetically. And that journey begins right now, from the inside out.